these women of vision who took their vision and translated it into what we know as the modern Amelia Island Museum of History. Many of us are drawn to the museum because of our love of history, but once we're here, we realize the need and indeed the responsibility to preserve that history for the generations to come. We are so grateful for Susan and Deon and their love of history who brought them to this place, and their foresight, creativity, and dedication that makes us sure that for years to come, the Amelia Island Museum of History will tell the stories that will cause visitor appreciation and education of Nassau County's rich and natural history. We are proud of our museum, and our pride is reflected in the wonderful community and member support that we receive. Also, our treasured volunteers, and we see them here. Not to mention our professional staff that we also feel very fortunate to have. On behalf of the Board of Trustees, it is my pleasure to welcome all of you here this evening. And if you will allow, I will introduce you to the Mistress of Ceremonies, Carol Ann Atwood. Carol Ann is a past president of the museum. She was president for 3 years consecutively.
My goodness, it's been a long time since I've been up here. Thank you, Pat. This is an evening of homecoming, celebration, and joy as we honor two very special ladies, Deon Jaccard and Susan Sterling Little. Before I introduce our first honored guest, I want to take literally just a couple of minutes for some of you who might know, and a lot of you who might not know, briefly tell you the early history of this museum before it became our Amelia Island Museum of History. In 1975, the Duncan Lamont Clinch Historical Society formed a committee to collect items and interpret the history of Amelia Island. And in 1977, the Decker Collection, a collection of Victorian artifacts, was entrusted to the museum by the city, and the Fernandina Historical Museum was incorporated. Initially, the old schoolhouse on Atlantic Avenue housed the collection, and Rayonier donated $5,000, and local businesses provided the match. In 1979, the museum board negotiated a 99-year lease for this old jail building. I think it was $1 a year, is that right, Deon? And a school contest resulted in the new name, Eight Flags Museum of Nassau County. In 1982, the Junior League of Jacksonville donated $10,000, and renaming of the museum occurred shortly thereafter. The Florida Museum of Transportation and History. Efforts began in earnest to clean up and refurbish this old building, and it closed in 1985 for a full-scale renovation. Who better to tell this story of that beginning of our Amelia Island Museum of History than the first of our honored guests tonight, and the visionary lady who introduced me to my volunteer work here some 14 years ago. Please join me in a warm welcome for Deon Jaccard.
I would like to show you a before that you can see up close and personal while I speak with you. And this shows the room. You know what? I'm not sure where it is. It was the room where Bonnie camped out all the time and where we welcomed groups until I rang a bell, and then it was time to come in here. I feel very much at home in here because I can still recognize it. But I must tell you, the graciousness, the grandeur that you have achieved within this little building is spellbinding for someone who hasn't been inside for a decade. Can you imagine? It's truly gorgeous. And I laud you, every one of you that even raised a finger to help us. And of course, I'm so gratified. If you want to start this around, I have taped it to the one room because the book is falling apart. It's had a lot of wear. This is just the biggest treat in the world for me. I didn't expect to come back. I want to thank you for coming, and I want to thank Jan Davis for my coming. She wouldn't give up. She even sent me a Christmas card and said, "When are you coming?" And finally, she said something that sealed the deal. She said, "You are the mother of this place." And I thought for a minute, well, maybe that takes into account that I worked myopically for 12 years for no pay. Is that what mothers do? This is like a superb novel, the story of the museum. And when you open the book, you're caught by that first chapter, are you not? In it is some character, some compelling notion that you just have to carry through with. And it grabs you, does it not? I and others, I wasn't alone, lived that first chapter. You have lived the second, the third, and I think the fourth. Except that I think yours is now accompanied by a full orchestra. You have gone so far and to such depths with your wonderful transition of our museum. Not my husband, when we came here in 1984, I was retired. Don't we go to a beautiful island to retire? No. Most of us know better than that. We do not. But I thought I had. My husband was going to work his territory out of Jacksonville. And I was going to, I don't know what I was going to do. But as I was unpacking, I got as far as the dishes so we could eat, and the bedroom so we could sleep. And then, do you know the expression, dancers like to dance? So of course, I had to come see what goes on here regarding history. That had been my background. So came down, walked into the chamber, and who was there? Susan McCraney, is her name Sigmund now? Mm-hmm. You know what she's like. She's like this with everyone. Her eyes are bright. She just latches on with her eyes and wants to communicate with you. And I said to her, I have 2 questions, please. I need to know, are there walking tours of the historic district? No. No, but. And I said, excuse me, but is there a museum? And then I saw her flicker between yes and no. And I thought, now what is the problem? She said, well, tell me about yourself. Where are you from? What did you do? And then I confessed, well, I spent 30 years as an educator in art and history museums. And she didn't say a word. She picked up a telephone. She asked for a woman named Helen. And she said, I have a live one. She said, now, I want to take you to the museum. Oh dear, that was the wrong word. Because I got here and granted on the outside, you would have taken a wrecking ball. But then I think that would have challenged it. It had a beautiful essence though, the Art Moderne style, imposed on it by brick diapering as it's called, under glass blocks, with a cornice and belt course. But it also had broken windows. Also had a track running around it. Remember the Florida Museum of Transportation History? Gina lived through all of that, didn't you, Gina? And so there it was, sad and neglected. But I went inside, oh yeah, it was an eviscerated jailhouse. And inside on it, we had a big key, big brass key that opened the jail doors on Cedar Street, 3rd Street. And I walked into the hallway. And it was decrepit because, of course, the plaster was filthy. It was, well, Lucy Jones said you can use every adjective in your vocabulary, but you won't be able to describe the odor. It was pitiful. But there was something about it that had hope. And that was one good thing at first that I saw. And that was a cleared room. It had been cleared by, how many of you know John Powers? John Powers lived on the plantation. He was retired CIA, and he said, I love everything that is dirty, noisy, and violent. So he had taken down all of the non-supporting walls that were the jailer's house, where he lived, and that was on the 3rd Street side, living room, dining room, bedroom, bath, and kitchen. And that earned him a huge room, 45 feet by about 35. And every time Phil and I came back to look at this ruin, we're attracted to ruins. We bought old houses. Any of you ever restored old houses for a hobby? And we came back mainly because of that room and the hope that it gave us for the rest of the building. So we came back, and by that time I'd read, and I had read everything the library had, and the history here was world class. A story you do not find even at Independence Hall, as from an old guy at Independence Hall. So I knew, wow, this place justified a museum for that reason only. Now I just have to find somebody to believe so too. So I went to Helen. She was a mogul of the history. And I said to her, I tell you what, if I can find people that believe in this like I do, will you lecture them? And she said, no. I write, I don't talk. So I was very discouraged by that. And I decided to go ahead. So I went to all the local groups I could find who would let me talk for 2 minutes and say, come along with me. And we're going to have an experience of a lifetime. Well, I got no one. And then I decided, because I wasn't going to stop, that they were really responding, not to me, but to the fact that there had been so many efforts to get this thing off the ground, and those were with our own people. Who was this carpetbagger to come to town, I was called a carpetbagger, and try to fuss with our history? So I went to the plantation that doesn't have the tight connection to Fernandina, but I took a higher authority. George Will, anybody read George Will? Washington Post National, okay, Writers Group, and he had said America has a yearning for the community feeling that comes from organized, collected environments of people in the communities. And I got 23 hands, as long as I wasn't asking. 23 people signed up. I sent a legal pad around, got 23 names, and I was set. Went back to Helen Lidrico, and I said, Helen, I have people. Well, she had banked on my nothing. So she said, tell you what, if you can get George Davis to join me as a lecturer, then I'll do it. Otherwise, no. George Davis would talk to anybody. So he came with his pictures. My docents showed up, and we had one room. Remember the Junior League of Jacksonville grant that Susan got? She had used it for the room, not of the main pile of the building, but of that side arm of the building, that room over there, where the women were kept. And she had made a room out of it that had carpeting, 25 chairs, ready to go, a roof that didn't leak, and a dais. So we were set. The girls showed up, and so did Helen and George. And they gave them a 2-hour lecture. And I said, this is what we're going to do with this story. And so they were called, because of course, how could you not be? So I told them, here's what we're going to do. You've had lesson number 1. You only need 2 or 3 more. And then you are a docent for this museum, which is going to be the Amelia Island Museum of History. And so they were just almost as involved as I was. However, we had a bit of a problem. I put the calendar, it passed around, and it came back to me totally empty for April. And this was April 1st. That meant that I had to give 2 weeks of tours, 8 and 11. But the docents kept showing up to see how it was threaded together. Phil and I had set it up as spokes, as someone said, of a wheel or star. And on one side would be a flag from the period, and on the other would be artifacts from the period, so that we could show the 8 flags. And in the walls, niches for the Timucua Indian culture, and 3 piers, which look mighty simple compared to what is there now, for the waterfront and railroad exhibits, and David Levy Yulee's fabulous story. And then the wall was punched, it still is punched, I'm so glad you kept it that way, into the women's quarters that we made a Victorian room. You have put it to better use, as it happens. And that was the sum of our tour. Oh, but there were problems. And you know that it's true, it's wonderful what can be accomplished if you do not consider your disadvantages. And they were multiple. We had no electricity, which meant no air. And it was very, very hot. So what we did was have paper fans on a table over by the door. And then, of course, because we had no electricity, we didn't light. And so what we had to do was put a flashlight over on the table. Remember Gina? So that the docent could show exhibits on dark days. And remember Gina? We had 7 buckets out in the back hall, and we did not let anybody go out there because, of course, there were wires dangling from the 2nd floor, and it was abysmal. So we put those 7 buckets out there, and we could bring them in on raining days. We had no choice. The plumbing pipes, which gaped down from the ceiling with their mouths wide open. We don't know how it happened, but when it rained, liquid would come down through those pipes on our head. So if we put the buckets down, we could show people where not to stand. Now we had one hero I must tell you about. Do you know Roy Hunt? All right, his mother lived on the plantation at the time that I went to the plantation begging for people to come help me. And she said to him, those people are really trying with disadvantages. You need to help them, Roy. Well, Roy did, but let me ask you if his initial question was much of a help. He called me when we were 6 weeks old and very comfortable in our simple way. And he said, Deon, I wonder if you could, these are his words, arrange a museum experience and a walking tour of the historic district for 50 members of the Trust for Historic Preservation. Well, when opportunity knocks, don't you open the door. And don't you then pray it doesn't rain. Oh, it was good. They had a bathroom on the bus. And it arrived with all 50 people, and they got off the bus, and we divided them in half. Half went into the multimedia room with me, and I gave them a lecture on the Timucua Indians, Clash of the Cultures, like you have downstairs. And the other half came into the main room, we call it Exhibit Hall. And 5 docents were in there. And the 5 docents were waiting to receive 10 of the visitors. And there was a board member to usher them to these people standing there. And each docent had a chart where you go next. Do not go anywhere but where it says you are to go next. Then you won't get found out. And it worked like a charm. And then we said, okay, now everybody is going to go where everybody else was. So they swapped and we did it again. And then we let them go out in the grass and onto the bus and relax a minute while we set up the multimedia room with 25 new rented chairs. And they sat down and they had box lunches on their laps. Worked very well. And then the letter came 3 days later from Tavia Hewitt, and she was the executive director of the Florida Trust for Historic Preservation, this group. And she said wonderful things. And of course, the docents were thrilled because they'd worked so hard. The walking tour guides, they had also taken a tour of South Fernandina, gone into Lois Hall's house. It was quite magnificent, we thought. And the testimonials seemed to agree. So now we had a letter. But I was running on empty. I was a walking stiff. I was exhausted. I needed Bonnie. And Bonnie came to me and said, oh, she was a docent. And she said to me, I tell you what, I'm going to have to get a job. I'm very sorry. It's been a great experience. And I said, wait just long enough for me to raise some money. So we had an island-wide tour of homes. Anybody heard that? Gina does. And it was a logistical nightmare. But it was successful, and that night, after hours, Bob Martins and I sat down at my dining room table, and we counted enough money to hire Bonnie for 3 months. And Bonnie agreed, and she was with me 9 years later. Now, why would anybody come to a museum like this? Ann Driver. Do you remember Ann Driver? What a doll. She came out of curiosity. Somebody had said to her, you know, it's a little rough, but I think you'll enjoy it. So go and see. Well, she did. She came. And she stayed 11 years. She became a painter of all exhibits, and she was an artist. And you've got a sculpture, and I've yet to see it. Bonnie, where's our sculpture? It's about this tall. It's of a woman, and she's in a pastel gown. It's probably early 20th century. And she has 2 arms. One of them was made, sculpted, and painted by Ann Driver. And I challenge you to tell the difference. Where is that girl?
I'm sorry, I missed that.
You know the sculpture of the girl? Multimedia room? I don't know.
You're gonna have to ask someone else.
All right. So Bonnie freed me, last page. Bonnie freed me to write grants. And from the state, we got carpeting in the exhibit hall, and we got electricity and track lighting. And we were overjoyed because we were really moving up in the world. And then I wrote the first of 14 grants to the state because Roy Hunt said, right now, right now. So I did. And every one of those 14 grants was rewarded until we got a special category grant for the 2nd floor. That seemed like ancient history. It was at least 2 developments ago. But it was very exciting. So then I was on the road. And I decided, all right, we're going to become accredited. Can you believe that? We're going to become accredited now. So there's such a process. Are you accredited? Not yet. Oh, God. You've got that to look forward to. I went to MAP. You have to do MAP 1, MAP 2, MAP 3. Do you know about that? All right, I did MAP 1. Because I had to write the grant. And a man came and lived in for 3 days and he went everywhere. All right, you all know you're not supposed to brag. No, this is reporting, not bragging. However, I'm about to brag. And this is not done by a surrogate because I don't have one. This man finished his 3-day search of this museum then, and he said this is why you could be accredited. To summarize, the Amelia Island Museum of History has achieved an enviable record in a few short years. Its programs, finances, volunteerism, collections, you're going to be as surprised as I was, research, publications, physical facility are outstanding. Another testimonial. So you know what we did with it? We invited the Smithsonian, and they came and stayed for 3.5 days. We invited Elder Hostel, and they came. And we had them for the first 2 years. And it was sellout, and they were thrilled, and you've had them every year since, haven't you? Is that not marvelous? I expected it to be in the red, but we were going to do it, because this is the way to educate the people that are really looking for it, I thought. And they came, and we had a fabulous time, and we cleared $20,000. And I was in shock, expecting to see what a bookkeeper I was. Thank God for Bob Martinez. And so now I am going to tell you one final story about Charles Pace. And I'm going to start. Charles Pace. Have you ever heard of him? He's an actor. And we were getting traveling exhibits, but they were all about signage. And we're a spoken history museum. And the result is education with pleasure. Double pleasure from the speaker and from the learners who come to us. And so Charles Pace came to us to impersonate Frederick Douglass. He did a perfectly beautiful job. I think Hal was here. And very few white faces were, however. This is Black History Month. And he asked me, just talk about Black history that long and say no more, and I'm coming in character. You know whose character he came in as? Malcolm X. It was fiery and fabulous. And when he finished, you could feel it in the room. It was electric. And it was so unfair. And then a very dark man, very big with the voice of Morgan Freeman, said, I think like a black man because I am a black man. How long am I going to have to apologize for that? Isn't that beautiful? Would he say that today? Maybe not. That's a good one. I want to thank you, Amelia Island Museum of History, for having me as your guest, and for helping others come to you and have these encounters that, believe me, you will never forget. Take it from one who hasn't. Thank you. I love you all.
Hey, I'm not going to turn my back to you, so I'm going to face the computer screen while I show you, and Deon will appreciate this when you passed around the book. Those are very small pictures, but we've got them up on PowerPoint. So you can see before, after, and after, which is current. So, our visionaries. Deon Jaccard. Of course, there's Deon and Charles Bennett, a congressman at that time, and Phil Jaccard, Deon's husband. The first of 3 of her books, The Historic Splendor of Amelia Island, Found in Fernandina, which is the story of her museum making, and Clash of the Cultures, the Timucuan and the French and the Spanish. The museum is founded. First entrance on 3rd Street. Doesn't look like the one today. Our second entrance, which was on Cedar and Current. Now you can see this a little bit bigger. This is what Deon found. A mess, wasn't it? Deon in the reference room. The reference room again. Our computer stations now. Exhibit hall, when she found it. Exhibit hall. Part of the docent tours that were held in here. The Timucuan Indians, the French, the shrimp boats and boat building exhibit, the library. The Christmas tree always tickles me. The way the library was. and the way it is today. The Dorian Dig Room. The Dorian Dig Room after Deon finished. Student Hall, that's where we are right now, which is now, of course, Baker Hall. Student Hall. And currently. The Victorian Room. Stage 3, which we have now. Our gift shop. Did you go in the gift shop, Deon?
Oh, yes, I'm so impressed.
Our second visionary, Miss Susan Little. Her doing strategic planning with the board members. Our Jailhouse Muse, our newsletter. Training the staff. There she is with Morgan and with Carmen. Explaining David Lee to Yulee. A big heart. Susan Little and Susie Birdsong. Amelia's real treasure. And of course, good friends. Okay, may I have some lights, please? Now, this is a brief sort of overview. And now I would like to introduce Susan. Within a month of Susan and Bob Little's arrival on Amelia Island in the summer of 1995, Susan became immersed at the museum in coordinating the first elder hostel program. From that summer forward, she assumed roles as docent trainer, elder hostel lecturer, board member, chairman of the Phase 1 and Phase 2 of the renovations, and twice board president. When asked in 1998 to take the role of board president, Susan recognized that Deon's departure had left a vacuum in leadership for the future. Using a development process that she had participated in as a board member in the Fulton County Schools in Atlanta, she proposed to the board that a long-range plan for the museum be developed with input from members, staff, and board. The culmination of that input became the basis for a strategic plan that has been an umbrella for change since that time. The plan called for an upgrade of the physical structure as well as an upgrade in exhibits. In addition, the plan called for a revamp of policies and procedures. I see Ms. Sue Ann Tam back there, which is the responsibility of the board. The creation of an archival library that would spotlight collection management and emphasis on increased membership and fundraising. Ambitious goals were set. Many people were involved in committees that would carry out the goals. Membership increased at one point to 600 members, and local support grew. But the question remained, how to pay for the physical changes. Local support was obtained with an all-out fundraising effort in 2000. In addition, 2 grants, one for $217,000 and one for, I think, $300,000, was obtained through the state grant program for historic preservation. Having gained a familiarity with the state grant process through the experience with the Trinity Methodist Church Preservation Project, you remember that well? And after making many trips to Tallahassee on behalf of the museum, Susan was appointed to the Florida Historic Commission, where she was a proponent not only of our geographic area, but of the teaching of history and social studies in Florida schools. Her presence on the committee undoubtedly and subconsciously helped the museum's cause. She also served on the board of the Florida Trust for Historic Preservation. Serving as chairman of both the Exhibits Committee and then the Renovation Committee until her departure in 2007, she has left her stamp on the changes that have been made. Whenever needs become apparent, answers were found. She proposed the idea of greeters in order to have the museum open every day from 10 to 4, and inaugurated the Madams, a cadre of women power for specific events. Look tonight at the physical changes in the old jailhouse and please tour all around the building. A reference library, archival storage, attractive exhibits, a gift shop, refurbished Baker Hall, there's Jim Baker back there, and even a kitchen, yay! Speak to the metamorphosis that has continued since the days that a cadre of people cleaned out the old jail cells. A policy manual exists that gives solid form to this institution that only becomes important when it's needed. We've come a long way, baby. If you've worked with Susan, you have heard her repeat the phrase she learned in her college days in the mortarboard honorary. Leadership is the ability to bring out the best in people. She always gives credit to others, and in her remarks tonight, I am sure will recognize many of those she has worked with, both volunteers and staff. She never asks anyone to do anything or work any harder than she's willing to do herself. Susan's impact on the museum, historic preservation in Bernardina, with her leadership on the Trinity Project, and work on the old Nassau County Courthouse, and in the state, is recognized this evening as we induct her and Deon into Heritage Hall. Please welcome my very dear friend, Susan Little. There are at least 4 seats up here.
There's 4 seats. 5, 1, 2, okay. 4 seats.
Where was that seat?
Okay, anybody else looking? We got everybody looking. Got some back here. We got back here. Ladies and gentlemen, what a fun day this is. So great to have Deon with us, and for her and for Greg to be here too. My remarks tonight are going to be threefold. 1, some thank yous. 2, some things that I love about the museum. And 3, some recognitions. So let's start first of all with thank yous. Pat and your board. Your board members, current board members, would you raise your hands? Current board. I thank you. Please stand. Please stand. It is a sincere thank you to you for recognizing me and Deon in this way. Secondly, to Carol Ann, who was given the task of organizing tonight and getting you all in this room, and for limiting Deon and me as much as she can, right? So that we would not run over. And to Bill Birdsong, who worked on the PowerPoint. We didn't use PowerPoint, did we? And as was mentioned before, to Jan Davis, who this has been her, where's Jan? This has been an idea of hers for a long time, that she wanted all of us together, and we're delighted you can be here tonight. And to Deon. And to Deon, we thank Deon for establishing the story, for giving a place to tell the story, and for telling us to do it with pleasure. So we thank you. All right. I was going to do David Letterman's, you know, his list of 10 reasons I love the museum. So I had it to 3. Okay, so don't get nervous, it's 3. Okay, number 3 reason that I love the museum. I like this place so much because it is such an example of a good volunteer program. It is a beacon for volunteers. Now, it would be natural to think that people who are interested in history would find a home here. people who are interested in being, for instance, docents, researchers, or archivists. But when you throw in greeters and madams and master gardeners and people who work in the gift shop and people like Carmen's Mighty Men who are out there still, I think, parking cars, you see that you can involve so many people in so many different ways, and it's under the umbrella of a historic museum. So that's one reason. Second reason I love the museum. Now you just have to let me be personal here about this, okay? I want my brain to continue to grow. Do you know you can grow brain cells? You know that. I always thought maybe you couldn't push yourself. So if you push yourself hard enough, or about little sooner, you push yourself hard enough, you can make that brain grow. All right, now, I wouldn't want you to come tonight and not maybe learn one little thing. When I did the tour downstairs, and I would go on and on and on about the 13 colonies and how East Florida and West Florida would not join and they stayed away and blah, blah, blah. And I kept thinking, but they were colonies. East Florida and West Florida at the time of the Revolution were colonies. Now, where else were there colonies, you all, besides the 13 original ones? Where else were there? In Canada. So we had that whole group in Canada, we had the 13, and we had East and West Florida. Aha. The thing that organized people, remember, was the First Continental Congress, and then the Second, and out of that came the Declaration of Independence, and out of that was the war movement, and eventually the first Constitution. All right, did they ask Florida to come to the First Continental Congress? Do you know the answer? They did. They asked East and West Florida and all the colonies in Canada. They asked them all to come to the First Continental Congress. Do you know how many came? 12. What we think of the 13 original colonies, 12 came. Do you know what state didn't come? Again, farthest from Boston, Georgia. Georgia didn't come to the first. Then, the Second Continental Congress, the 13 came and the others didn't. Now, here's my problem. Did they ask them to come back? Did they ask East and West Florida to come? So, now that I live in North Carolina and I've made a friend with somebody who can get me into this one part of this one library, I want to find the guest list for the Second Continental Congress. If you study history, just keep moving. And Deon, we talked about that Treaty of Tordesillas. Honey, I stood there in Tordesillas, Spain. Poor Bob, it's driving rain. Bob got me to the middle of the plane and said, Susan, if you want to walk on down there, you go on by yourself. And there it was, the place they signed that Treaty of Tordesillas. It was fabulous. Okay. So I recommend history to you to keep the brain moving. Okay. Now, for people. As you honor me tonight, you are honoring a whole group of people who did the body of work. And I want to recognize some of those people. And it's wonderful that so many are here, but I can't have everybody come up because it's too crowded. But I want, beginning with Richard Thomas, and I think there's Richard, and I'm saving the new staff and the new people up over here. But starting with Richard Thomas through Jan, the presidents in that period of time, would you all stand? Calvin, Carol Ann, stand. Calvin and Carol Ann, presidents, Richard Thomas. Okay, the presidents of the board. Okay, you all, when times are good, they get some credit. When times are bad, they take all the flack, okay? And I want the vice presidents to stand, who were vice presidents, and I was in that group too, who were vice presidents with us, with Calvin, and there's my Jim right there, and there's Robert, and there's David, and there's my Joy. Okay, they're vice presidents. I want to tell you something. When times are good, they get no credit. When times are bad, they still are doing all the work, okay? So those are your presidents and vice presidents. Next thing, I want to have the secretaries stand. The secretaries of the board in the same period. Now, that's cute Vicki Gibson that just came in. She was the secretary. That's Vicki Gibson. All right, who else were secretaries? We got Bill Birdsong, we got Sue Ann, we got Bill Birdsong.
Yes.
Jim, were you secretary for a while?
Yeah.
You look at these people and you know, y'all look at the room, there are only 4 of them. Row. And it's all down there. It is all cataloged. This was not casual. This is all documented, and we are so grateful to them. But even more so, and I won't say more so, but I want the treasurers to stand. Where are the treasurers? Joe and Diane. I forgot to say with Sue Ann, but she stood as secretary. Sue Ann has to be credited with the policy manuals. Nobody cares about policy except Sue Ann and Susan. I mean, it's just what I'm saying. But without it, there's a problem. Okay. Did you notice how the numbers dwindle till you get down to the treasurers? There aren't that many treasurers. Okay. And I saw Ron Kurtz come in, and Ron will remember this. Diane's back there. Someone, I think Ron called me in Wilmington. He said, Susan, you know the new computer we have with the financial records? And I said, yes. He said, they're gone. And I sat down, and I didn't just fall over. I called back, and I said, Ron, it's okay. We have backups. I learned at Fulton County Schools, you need backups. We've got backups. We put that new system in there, da-da-da-da-da. He called me back. They had backed it up, but the backups were blank. There were, we can tell that now, can't we? There were no records. I sat going to North Carolina going, I want you to give Diane Pasega a hand. She had kept every paper record of the whole treasury. Light flashes in front of me. That was one of my events when my light flashed in front of me. All right, I want to talk now about board members during this time. If you were a board member during this period of time with all this cast of thousands, stand up. I Bill, you were a board member. Oh, did you do that as well? Okay, board members, and there they are back there. Some are still on the board members. Okay, and listen, you all look at Warren Hard. Warren Hard is the man that did the first kind of getting information on an elevator, right? Warren came in, he was set, and we all went, okay, we can get it. Thank you all. All right, and the next group, how about committee chairman? How about an event chairman? Stand up if you've been committee chairs, event chairs. Okay, where's Janet Kohler? I see her back there. Janet? All right.
Committee chair.
Well, you're the gift shop. You're the gift shop chairman. And Carol Condit was here, and Susie. They've all stepped in. These are all people who have just worked so hard at their individual areas, and we thank them. During that same period of time, trying to entertain and work with all these volunteers, we did have staff members who were in charge of us. Sort of, if we paid attention. Some days we paid attention, some days we wouldn't. So if you were a staff member from Richard Thomas through Jan, come up. I want to show you off. Carmen, Ron, come up, and Bonnie, come up. Are we just down to throw, or Thea? I thought Thea's here. Okay.
Into the group.
The group got smaller. The group's got smaller too. The group's got smaller too. But I can tell stories. We can tell. And Thea, you were a staff member during this period. Oh yes. And when you all stood up, as all the officers and the board members and everything, I can tell a story about each one of you as we go through it. My favorite one on Ron here. and Ron, maybe I shouldn't tell exactly, but he and I made a first call in the year 2000 for our first money. And we went to Jack Heelan. And we sat in there and we made our pitch and we were so good. And Jack Heelan said, well, what do you want? And we said,
I don't know. We didn't think we'd get this far. We thought the door would be closing.
so I'll tell what he said. He said, well, we don't know. He said, do you think 10,000 would help? And Ron and I go, oh, yeah, that would help. So we very calmly, collectively thanked him, walked out into the hall and went,
That's accurate.
And Thea has been such a breath of fresh air with us, and I'm so glad that I was here long enough to work with Thea.
I'm so glad she took a chance.
And Miss Bonnie is the bridge. Bonnie is the bridge. And people would mistake us all the time, and they'd call me Bonnie, and and then down on, was it 6th Street, we were doing Elder Hostel, and that's when we used to yell at each other, and we'd go, hooty hoo!
And I do that still.
Oh, yeah, well, I do it at home. I do it at home. All right, now on Miss Carmen, I wanted to be sure that I said this correctly, because I thought about you on the way down here. Because when Carmen came in, she came in with an insurmountable amount of work to be done. She is a historian, she is an archivist. And one summer, she and I touched every article in the archives.
It was fun.
Sure, it was fun. It was fun. And trying to decide what exactly would go in the exhibits. And I'll let you tell them about the day that we took the vase off the
Do I have to?
Tell it fast.
Okay, so there's this vase on the top shelf, and we're cataloging everything, and everything has numbers on it. So I pull the vase down, and I go to look at the bottom, and a whole lot of sand or something falls all upon the ground.
And the people watching us thought it was probably a Timucuan Indian. I knew right away it was sand, but they didn't, because they just saw this stuff drifting down. And Carmen and I were just, well, we had some good times. And I want to always give credit that she was the director in charge of all the changes. She was the person that worked with those building crews and handled all that sort of thing. So, glad to have you back. Glad to see everybody. I want you to also recognize that at the time there were wonderful angels always hovering around us, and some of them are here tonight. And if you don't know why they're angels, just ask somebody. But the Condits and the Langs are here. Where are the Langs? Wait till the Langs. And the Condits, are they in here? Carol's in there. Because they've been so generous in spirit.
Carol's working in the kitchen.
Please thank, they've been so generous. And I want to recognize Marilyn Evans-Jones also, because Marilyn was instrumental in getting that first grant. And Marilyn's with us tonight. I have to one real personal thing. Pat and I date back till 1961. We have been together, not continuously, but we knew each other in 61. Of course, I knew Bob Little ever, beginning in 08 or something, way back when. But I want you to also notice that Fulton County Schools produced Sally Taylor, who's here tonight, was on the board. Stand Sally Taylor. Barbara Wagner, who was on the board. Where's Barbara? Barbara Wagner. I came out of Fulton County, and the new director, Judy McCoy, did too. So I want you all to think well of Fulton County Schools.